Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. Today's event is the seventh of the Studying Greece webinar consulting series titled From Insight to Impact, aimed at providing strategic guidance and consultation to Greek universities interested in developing a comprehensive and coherent internationalization and recruitment strategy, tailored to the special needs of each institution. The sector of higher education is rapidly changing and challenging environment, affected by a plethora of factors, including shifting geopolitics, global economic, trade, and commercial relations, as well as societal parameters like changing demographics. Greece is an emerging study destination. Over the past few years, Greek higher education institutions invest in internationalization, prioritize international education, and create international study programs, bachelor's, master's, and PhDs, as well as short-term courses, aimed at attracting international students from around the globe. Studying Greece is, of course, focuses on the strategic internationalization of Greek universities, and is pleased and honored to collaborate with high-profile experts of the field who generously offer their consultation and experience and help us navigate the complexities of this high-demanding environment of international education, study abroad. So today we're glad and honored to have two experts, global experts in internationalization, recruitment, and study abroad, who will be sharing their insights and perspectives into a series of critical topics and issues affecting international education. Nick Stevenson oversees ICEF's operation across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. With over a decade at ICEF, a leading organization in the field of internationalization and international recruitment, he has been central to expanding the organization's reach and fostering partnerships between education institutions and trusted recruitment agents worldwide. Nick holds a joint honors degree in Spanish and management and an MBA from the University of Salford, with a research focus on the future of education agents. We also have the honor and pleasure and privilege to collaborate with Alison Durber. Miss Alison Durber is a leading consultant in international education market research with nearly 30 years in the field of international education. At EduWorld, a leading organization providing strategic insights and guidance to higher education institutions from around the globe interested in investing in strategic internationalization. Alison serves as an independent director. Alison serves as well as an independent director at Janison Education Group and holds a degree in business studies from the University of Sheffield. Nick and Alison, thank you very much for your great cooperation, and the floor is yours. I would like to also to thank all our attendees, and I hope that we will be able to have an open discussion at the end of the two presentations. So Nick and Alison, the floor is yours.
Great. Alison, do you want to go first?
Sorry, am I starting?
I'll be going.
It's up to you.
That's fine. I'll start.
Okay, sorry. I'm very happy to start.
Just to kind of to give you an idea of what we're going to run through here. So we're both coming out from a slightly different perspective. I represent ICEF, so a lot of our expertise is based around the agent world. So we're going to have a look at some of the data and what that shows, based on the mobility trends that we see around the world and what we'd probably recommend for Greek universities looking to internationalize. Alison?
And we're going to also present a sort of bigger macro perspective. What are some of the big trends in terms of international student mobility based upon hard data? obviously recognizing that there's a slight lag, or in instances, quite a big lag between that data and where we are today, hence the importance of the agent insights. And as somebody who doesn't work directly with agents, but researches amongst them, I can only say how important I think they are, both as a distribution tool, but also they give us a real litmus test on the market. Where is it today? What are students thinking and feeling? And no other data source can actually give us that kind of up-to-date market read. So for me, I think it's invaluable to have both the big perspective, but also actually what's going on today in the marketplace.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to just set the scene of where we are at the moment. So what we've seen over the last couple of decades is a rapid explosion in growth of global tertiary education. So a lot of that has actually happened since 2008. So as you'll see from this graph, it really did explode from this point onwards. And a lot of the growth took place within Asia, so Eastern and Southern Asia specifically. And more specifically, we mean India and China as the two biggest drivers of that growth. So obviously, several reasons for this, the increased global participation. So certain countries, they maybe didn't have provision of higher education as their population expanded. But a lot of it is to meet the demand of the growing demand for skilled labor. But also technology enabled more people to access higher education more easily at a lower cost. And there was investment in education from respective governments as they look to upskill their economies and jobs markets. So that's how we got to where we are today with this growth of higher education globally. And looking in terms of international education mobility, we've seen that grow from a teeny tiny market of 2 million international students in 1998. Well, that was when UNESCO began taking records, to 7 million in 2022. And Whole IQ expect this to grow to 9 million by the year 2030. And then admittedly, when they did this stat, it was pre-Trump, but they were forecasting the US to attract between 1.8 and 2.8 million students, just to give you an idea of that. So in terms of the growth of the industry, the growth of international student mobility, that's still happening. It may be the growth has slowed down somewhat as economic growth has slowed somewhat. What has changed or is changing is the growth of destinations. So, but for a myriad of reasons that we'll go into, the pattern of international mobility is changing. So while the pool is expanding, the kind of the destinations that they choose is expanding at the same time. So you may well see that numbers of international students going to some of the big destinations actually decrease as more destinations enter the market and compete, and the market becomes more competitive. Oh, sorry, just to touch on it, I know everybody says that they want their webinar to be interactive and so on, but we actually do mean it. So feel free to stick your hand up at any point. So we do have lots of graphs and graphics and data to show you. So if anything doesn't quite make sense or needs further explanation, feel free to stick your hand up. Okay, so just
on that point, are you able to see that, Theo or Georgios, in terms of whether people put great? So please just interrupt us if you have any questions that you want to ask, or anybody.
I think that our audience can put their questions in the chat box. That will facilitate.
Right.
I'll keep it. We'll
George,
keep it
do you agree?
I agree, or they can raise their hand through the Zoom app in order to ask the question directly if they want to.
Okay, good.
As you prefer, whatever works for you guys. Looking at these are the trends for international student mobility, and we mentioned China and India. They are the top two of the four big markets. So this is an acronym you'll see a couple of times, is MESDCs. So that stands for main English-speaking destinations, and often referred to as the Big Four. So China and India, in various orders, dominate these statistics, but there are different quirks. For example, for Australia, you'll see a lot more presence of Southeast Asia, that maybe just down to pure proximity, but also there are strong cultural ties between the nations. Canada does very, very well for French students in a way that other countries do not. And also is quite diverse in its recruitment as well. The UK has a strong affiliation with South Asia based on immigration patterns in the 1950s. So you'll see India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and I think that's it. Dominate these numbers.
Sorry, just to interrupt you on that, Nick. The European countries there, obviously, the only common data point for this is UNESCO's last most up-to-date data, which is 2022. This still reflects the European cohort. That's dropped off significantly, obviously, with Brexit. So we'll see that change if we took this data in 2024, which still UNESCO hasn't got. We'll see that change too.
Absolutely. And then you'll see the US is very diverse. It's often a case of who they're doing business with and who they have good cultural or good political ties with. So South Korea, they do very, very well in a way that other countries do not. Saudi Arabia, you see massive amounts of funded students go to Ivy League universities. To a lesser extent, you see the same in other countries. So yeah, those are the rough patterns that you see in terms of where international students will travel. This one's quite an intense graphic, but I'll do my best to unpack it. So to give you an idea, this is the total outbound net flow of international students. Obviously, China and India again being the top 1 and 2 for outbound students. Then you'll see Uzbekistan, which is a surprising one you don't often see or hear about so much, but that's because they send most of their students to China and Russia. So it doesn't necessarily tend to be one that you tend to see at other events or hear about anecdotally. And then Vietnam is in 4th place as a major sending market. And we're seeing that grow and grow year on year. A very, very important market. In terms of net flow of internationally mobile students, the US is far ahead, the US and the UK. But again, this was done in 2022 in what seemed like at the time a less complicated world. The US has obviously had its own issues going on. It's making itself very, very unattractive and uninviting to not just international students, but tourists in general. So we'll see how that happens. And then the UK has literally just this week announced a tightening up of visa or study and work restrictions. The post-study work visa has been cut. Things like that. All these things will contribute to a bit of a decline in these numbers. So we'll see these numbers start to reduce, and we'll see other countries start to increase up this table over the next few years. So to give you an idea of why this happens, so this all contributes. There's a myriad of different contributing factors of why the international education landscape is changing and being shaped by various events. There could be obvious global events like the COVID pandemic, where we saw a massive contraction followed by a quite rapid explosion and bounce back of international mobility. Quite a lot of held up money that needed to be spent was saved for international mobility. Then obviously the conflict in Russia and Ukraine. We used to see quite large numbers of Russian and Ukrainian students traveling overseas. That has changed and shifted during this conflict. Also, the overall slowdown of global economic growth. So every time there is a contraction in the Chinese economy or in the house building sector, the property sector, we see that tends to has a bit of that moves the needle in terms of international student recruitment from China. Suddenly that they're a lot more price sensitive, or the numbers aren't going in the same volume, or they're being delayed. But yeah, there's a very clear correlation between the two. And continuing this theme is the potential macroeconomic upheaval. For example, in Nigeria, we saw the devaluation of Nigerian currency, which saw lots of Nigerian students maybe pull out of the US or the UK to slightly cheaper destinations such as Ireland, Western Europe, and all sorts in between. And then the geopolitical instability means that students are increasingly favoring destinations that may be a bit more stable or politically aligned. So, for example, you may see students in Vietnam increasingly go to China, or students in China maybe go and stay within Asia, as if it's safer. And we see that they're often kind of students in China are seeing lots of images of all sorts of chaos happening in the West. So every time there's a mass shooting or something like that, or a terrorism incident in Western Europe or the US, you can be assured that the Chinese media is covering it, and that all contributes to a picture of decline in the West. And students are voting with their feet and increasingly looking at closer and cheaper destinations. Over to you, I think, Alison.
Obviously, Nick's talked about the big four. You're still the major recipients of international student mobility, obviously Australia, Canada, the UK, and the US. That's changing. We're seeing it change already, both a product of what Nick's talked about, geopolitical landscape, but also a product of government policy in many of these countries. You know, Australia and Canada have capped the number of students coming in. They are putting increasingly high English language requirements on students. They are changing the visa requirements. And they're expensive, certainly compared to some of the other emerging destinations that Nick's already referenced. They're also affected strongly, as he's mentioned, by current situation, right? Just this concept that maybe they're not such welcoming places. You know, arresting international students is not what any one particular parent wants to send their child to. And changing student priorities. Can they actually get the same type of qualification by going to somewhere closer to them? Move to the next.
Next slide.
Yep. We see that, you know, if you look at, for example, Western Europe, we've got Germany already has done well. Germany's had a strong internationalization effort underway for the last 20 years. They're projected to receive more than 400,000 students in this academic year. 90% of German institutions are reporting growing international enrollments. Obviously, India and China still dominate enrollments in Germany. Similarly, France too, they've already got over 400,000 students in 23-24, strong growth there, particularly Indian students. And they're really supported well by Study in Europe initiatives with people like Campus France working alongside Germany, the Netherlands, Estonia, Belgium to promote studies on the continent. Spain too, you know, Spain already hosts over 250,000 international students just in the higher education sector alone, probably another 100,000 students studying Spanish language. They've certainly started to change their policies towards international students, allowing greater part-time work. So, for example, international students can now work 30 hours a week instead of 20, material for many international students, and they're offering post-study work visas. They're strengthening their non-EU recruitment through strategies such as Focus Africa. So I think we'll see all 3 European destinations start to grow their international student enrollments. In contrast with a market potentially like Holland, where, as you're probably aware, post-Brexit, as each students across Europe look for courses in English language, the numbers in Holland are exploded. There's been some negative reaction to that as concept of saturation in these institutions and cities. And negative feedback generally. So we're seeing the Dutch government restrict numbers and requiring that more programs are offered or continue to be offered in Dutch rather than English language. You know, just from directly here, I heard many students from Spain looking to go where they've been told by the institution if they don't have housing not to come, even though they've offered them a place academically. We also see, next slide, please, the emergence of Asian destinations. And again, Nick's spoken to that, but South Korea predominantly has been an exporter of international students. They themselves now want to attract more international students. Their top markets are their neighbours, predominantly Vietnam, China, Uzbekistan. South Korea has grown, you know, look at only had 834 international students 20 years ago. So it's growing slowly. But we think there'll be strong growth. There has been quite a lot of mobility anyway between South Korea, Japan, and China for a long time, go back 20 years. So we think that will continue to grow as for the reasons Nick talked about, as you know, students are looking potentially to stay closer to home, to their allies, or those that are more politically aligned or more welcoming. Japan too, target, obviously part of that's to address their own contracting domestic student cohort. Their key markets, again, their Asian neighbours. Malaysia has also got a goal of 250,000 students by 2025. Malaysia has been trying to set themselves up as an international education hub, going back 20 years when they started to encourage foreign institutions to open campuses there. I think Monash Malaysia went in the late 90s. So they've been long-standing in terms of a T&E hub, but they're now also trying to attract international students into their own universities, giving students visa options for an additional post-study work year. Again, their key source markets, Asian neighbours, but also strongly in the subcontinent. Many subcontinent students going to study in Malaysia. So not only are the destinations and suppliers changing, but we're also seeing changes in terms of discipline and study level. I'm just showing you this data for the US. This shows enrollments between 1998 and 2023-24 for international students studying in the US. What it shows here, we see, I don't know whether a strong growth in maths and computer science enrollments, and for the most part, a flattening in terms of all other markets. Now, doesn't mean to say there aren't many business and management students, international students studying in the US. These are still the big disciplines. 1 in 4 international students are now studying maths and computer science in America. That creates its own challenges, and we'll come back to that a little bit later in terms of supply. How many maths and computer science students, international students, does a college want in its school? That's particularly a challenge for the public universities who have a mandate to actually recruit a certain number of domestic students into those programs. Engineering flat, but most other disciplines have been flat during that period of time.
Oops.
Reflecting, I guess, the earlier slide, these are the top fields of study in Greece for international students. Engineering, manufacturing, and construction, which I'm not surprised about. Obviously, we know there is really strong demand there. But I actually think your international students are relatively well spread across disciplines compared to other competing destinations. I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that, Theo, but typically we see, if you look at Australia, for example, international enrolments in Australia are predominantly in business at the undergraduate level. For me, when I look at this, I actually see a really quite diversified across discipline recruitment profile.
Have you also included Erasmus students?
No.
In the survey? Okay.
This is just the top line of full-time students. Obviously, your Erasmus numbers are really strong, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it works well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. And but it was conducted in 2022, right?
Yeah.
Mm. Okay.
So that's changed, right? And I don't know
Yeah,
whether you're seeing a significant increase in maths.
Yes, because for example, now we have Greek universities have 4 medical degrees, English taught medical degrees.
Yeah. So that,
which is the #1 subject area discipline, for international students in Greece.
in terms of interest or actual enrollments?
Both.
Both, right.
But when it comes to master's degrees, there's a wide range. So yeah, arts and humanities and social sciences included. Yeah. So we will have the chance to elaborate on this later on. Yeah.
All right, Nick, I'm going to ask you to move. The other point, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, is we're seeing a growing demand for transnational education. Obviously, transnational education being the delivery of educational programs in a country other than that in which the awarding body is based. So the number of students undertaking T&E continues to grow. This is fueled by increasing supply, a growing number of options for students, and growing flexibility. So we're talking here about things like offshore campuses. You know, the growth of the UAE's international student enrollment is almost exclusively fueled by transnational education. Online, growing numbers of particularly students enrolled in British T&E programs are doing it online. Obviously, twinning, that was the original start of transnational education, particularly in markets like Malaysia and China. If you look at the UK, difficult to get global, well, there isn't any global T&E enrollment data because all the data we present is actually for traditional onshore, sorry. But if you look at the UK, numbers of students enrolled in British transnational education programs is actually approaching the number of students coming to the UK to study. So huge growth, and I think we'll continue to see that, particularly in light of the craziness going on currently. And I know you offer those programs. You're doing that in Greece too, right? Theo, you've got foreign universities establishing in their campuses in Greece.
Yes, especially, you know that the Greek government passed a new bill allowing
foreign universities.
foreign campus branches to be established in Greece. But most of them, the vast majority, are already existing collaborations between UK higher education institutions and private colleges in Greece, and now they're moving forward to the next level to establish a campus branch. But yeah, it's the next stage of an existing collaboration. It's not something very fresh and new. But okay, it's good. It's normal. I mean, yeah.
But we know that there are millions of students doing TNE programs already, right?
Yeah, of course, definitely.
It's growing. So I think there's a real opportunity, well, for any country that's interested in growing offshore delivery in this space.
Yeah. And it's smart from the UK perspective.
Okay. But it's also smart from many. You know, if you can study in the Middle East, in the UAE, and do an American degree at an American university based in the UAE, many of their parents and their Arab neighbors actually would prefer to send their child to the UAE to study than they would to America.
Yeah.
It's to be safer, more religiously, politically aligned.
Yeah, and that's the main reason of transnational education, actually. Yeah, they leverage these needs, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead. And then
next slide. And then the other component, which I think you talked about earlier as well, Nick, is the growing demand for US study abroad. So these are students, American students doing short-term study overseas, usually a semester. It's part of their university degree. These numbers have been growing steadily over the last 20 years. Obviously, they had a huge dip in during COVID. But interestingly, the main study destinations for US students doing study abroad, the top 5 are all European. Greece's numbers continue to rebound, although they're still growing slightly less than the overall market. So Greece enrollments increased 34% from America versus 50% for the overall market. But Greece now gets into the top 10 destinations for US study abroad students. So I think that's very positive. And interestingly, my read, and I don't know whether people have different point of view on that, is I'm not hearing that students are fearful to travel into Europe. There's no sense that there might be some anti-American sentiment in Europe yet, whether that will change. But that's my current read from what I'm speaking to people in the market. Nick, had that next slide, and I think I'm handing back to you. Oh, sorry. And then these, and I think we talked a little bit about this earlier, but for me, in internationalizing at an institutional level, these are some of the really key questions you need to ask before you put your plan into place, which is, why are you doing it? What is it you want to achieve from it? For many institutions, and if you look at some of the countries that were at the forefront of internationalization, the original motivation was financial. In Australia, it's certainly the case. Certainly, I think in many instances in the UK, that might not be the case for you. You may not be looking to increase in overall revenue, but rather actually have a more diversified student population.
For smaller countries, like countries of Eastern Europe?
Eastern Europe, I think for many of them, it would be the case too. And I think for even small countries like New Zealand, a lot of the reason to internationalize was
financial.
Financial, right? And if you look at Canada, one of the big changes was actually when they started to be able to take the funds or a part of the funds back into the institutions at a provincial level, right? So I think a lot of the original motivation, that's not to say at all. I mean, I've got many clients who are like, no interest. It's not about revenue at all. It's about actually having an international student population within our university and the benefits that confers both on our domestic students as well as our international students. Or it may be that we are particularly keen to grow our collaboration overall with Africa, and therefore attracting international students from Africa is part of that. So for me, I think it's a really important question. Why are we doing that? And then what's the appetite at a management level to actually do this, because I think it's really hard. I would caution any institution that hasn't got support at a leadership level from doing it, because I think it's really hard. It's not an easy thing to do, to internationalize your institution. It requires changes across the board. So those are sort of two quick questions I think you should ask.
Yeah, that's fundamental. Yeah. Why are you doing it? Yeah,
Why bother?
exactly.
Why are we doing this, right? And and I mean, there is not to say that every institution's chasing revenue. Actually, if you look at Monash in the beginning, Monash actually wanted to have a campus on every continent. The leadership at the time, going back 20 years, decided it would be a really good idea. We should have a campus on every continent, and that's our strategy. We are going to be an world university. So it's not necessarily about revenue, but I think one needs to ask those questions. Are we willing to internationalize if the student doesn't generate any revenue? And there's a dilution of income, right? That doesn't mean everybody's willing to do that. Some institutions couldn't care less about the revenue. It's completely different. So for me, I think those are two quick questions. Then other really important questions. Sorry, Nick.
Briefly, I think the warning signs are there from other countries right now with some of the incentives. I think the UK, when the motive is purely, well, in some cases, is nakedly financial, to the point when questions are being asked about the numbers of international students, it's often justified in finances and economic contribution to the economy, to the university, and then they've done that a lot. And then now the government is seeing the revenues that they're bringing on for international students and now want to tax it. So they're implementing a levy of, I think, 6% on all international education revenue or tuition fees that they want to distribute within higher education. So you can fly a bit too close to the sun if you do chase the revenue only, to the cost of benefiting the wider campus, the wider university and higher education system.
But as far as countries like Greece are concerned, financial, of course, remains the first motive. But demographics also play a critical role. Yeah.
And I think that was, if you look at Germany, for example, one of the things they started to internationalize was because of the talent drain, right? The population was
low birth rate and need for international talent.
And that's the case, I think, also in Japan, South Korea. Their youth cohorts are contracting. The US too, right? For the first time, I think 2 years ago, the actual youth cohort for undergraduate enrollments contracted in the US, which was a reinvigorated focus on internationalization. I think that might change right now just because of the political landscape, but definitely was an impetus to do it. So other key questions I think you should be asking yourself is, where are you now? So how many enrollments have you got? What are the trends in it? What kind of market share have you got? How many students proportional to Greece and overall global European demand, let's say not the rest of the world. How are you doing in that area? And what existing international relationships can you leverage? What alumni, what research collaborations, what other partnerships, study exchange? Can you, to your point earlier, Theo, in the end, those were originally relationships. You're further developing them. To me, those are where you start to look, is what have you already got that you can leverage going forward? Where are your areas of real strength? What are your...
Yeah, but the real issue regarding Greece has to do with the brain drain.
Yeah.
Actually, we export Greek students, and we need to replace them by international students, and that's particular.
Absolutely.
Can I make a comment here, because I don't know.
Yeah, of course, Kostas.
Because the discussion is like very nice. It's like spontaneous. So I would like to ask you something regarding what we are discussing, because I would like to ask this, during the Q&A session. Like, whatever you present, and if we think, where the student mobility happens, on my mind, it links, two things. That's why we have very strong mobility now, as Alison mentioned, to South Korea, Malaysia, and Singapore, because the whole economy and the whole industry is moving over there. It's moving away from Europe and all the investment. So the triangle is good education, but also professional development regarding job opportunities. So whatever we are going to do, all the countries, they have the demographic, probably less in this area, but this area also are linked with the employment opportunities. Like, the industry is there. It's moving away from Europe. So even Germany will be irrelevant, probably if they move with the same minds. So everything now moves Malaysia, Singapore, South Korea. That's why you can see the big jump. And you can see bigger jumps because all the microelectronics, all nanoelectronics, all the technology is moving there. So I think that sometimes, our, let's say, how can I say, our, ambitions and what we expect is, it should be realistic and should be linked where the economy is. So it's not only to have good universities and offer, good education. The students, they think more. They think beyond, the graduation.
Employment opportunities.
Huh? I guess, and the closer you are in the opportunities, the better, the higher the employability rate and the better professional development. So it's like more than the education. I think that, everything should go with this trend and, our ambition and what do we expect should be realistic. This is like, my impression. And I would like to ask Alison, what is your impression about this?
I think there's no question that for many international students, the opportunity to get work experience after studying is important. That we can see that the post-study work visas in many markets have really attracted a cohort of students. That said, I think there are other cohorts for whom they are just coming to study. So, for example, and these are sweeping generalizations because every market is nuanced. Chinese students, many of them, they've no interest in remaining in Europe to work. They know that the work opportunities will actually be in their own country, right? So for me, it's about a more nuanced approach. And I think that's true for many American. Look, Britain attracts large numbers of American students. They're coming for the overall, degree and the experience, not just to get an opportunity after work. But I think it speaks to the necessary need to segment your market and pursue distinct segments, not a more generalized approach. And I think that's really challenging, right? Because we're trying to make broad generalizations about highly diversified markets, even within countries.
Yeah, and I think, like you do, Thodor, or to Theo, to say like, I think that the smart option, for countries like Greece should be to provide to international students the passport. So Greece to be a hub for them to link with the European industry. In this way, we can attract a lot of people. Otherwise, why to come, if you are far away from the technology developments and etc. Probably the lower cost of living, compared to what, the US students do they pay. However, I think that we need to, let's say, open our, let's say, policies, not only, to buy flats and stuff like this, come and study in Greece and then you're going to have, this European passport. I don't know how easy it is, but I think this is the only thing I think that we can attract, like to become a center, regarding education.
Yeah, in my opinion,
the quality.
The main components of our narrative to attract international students are safe country, cost effective, history, rich culture, and moderate climate. But at the same time, what you mentioned, Konstantinos, bridge in order to become EU citizens or find work and employment in other European countries. Yeah, we can provide it. I think that we can take one more question from the audience, from Ms. Macrigiani, and then we can leave Alison and Nick continue and finish their presentations, and we can have an open discussions at the end. Okay? Ms. Macrigiani.
Thank you. I would like to agree with Mr. Petridis, and specifically on the term that you used about brain drain. I want to say something, because we use this term a lot. And I have been in the situation that I was considering to leave Greece, either for work or studies. No one wants to leave their country if they have the ability to stay employed and get an amount of money that will spend the month in a way that is sufficient. I want to point out one more thing. We have students, PhD candidates, researchers that have scholarships that with 800 euros or 900 euros cannot pass by the month. There was a student in particular that left and returned to their country to go get a job because with that amount that he was getting paid from the university, they couldn't provide back to their family in Algeria and they couldn't spend the month here in Greece. So it's not brain drain. People want to stay in Greece, but they can't. And one more important thing that I have seen through my experience here for the last 4 months, approximately, that I've been hired for this position, it has to do with the insurance part of the agreement. Basically, when you try to get AMCA, you get the AMCA number, but what does that cover you? You don't have insurance capability, meaning that you have to get something else, either work part-time, or you have to be insured by your parents if they live and work in Greece and they pay taxes. But for international students, none of these two apply if they're not working part-time outside of the university. So what's left? To pay a private insurance company to be insured, which is extra money for these international students. So that's another issue. That's all from me.
That's very critical and practical. Thank you very much. We should consider. Yeah. Thank you. Alison.
Sorry, just on one point on that as well. I think that speaks to segmentation, though. There's a group of students who are looking as a pathway to migrate, right? We see that, particularly subcontinent students. But there's a whole other group who would like to come. They come with money. They're willing to work. Who, to your point earlier, you know, I think if you can work 20 to 30 hours a week, there are many students who are coming to Australia or America, Canada or New Zealand who actually can only come based upon the fact they can work. So it's about segmentation and targeting those with that value proposition, I think. It's not... So
I would probably reiterate the point I made before. I think the warning signs are there from Canada, UK, Australia. I think those first two in particular, that post-pandemic, they really, with China kind of in the doldrums and behind on recruiting, they really went big on migration-based recruiting from South Asia, and specifically using aggregators. So some of the quality assurance behind the recruitment wasn't quite there. And in the end, it fell over because a lot of students were missold, and the political fallout from that just became too much of a problem for the industry to sustain. So I'd say you need to focus on diversity, not just one kind of type of recruiting. You need not just South Asia, not just migration based. You want to focus on different regions, and then you can build a sustainable base to continue recruiting.
Agreed, and I understand the point of view, but I'm just saying the things I'm saying because of what I have seen so far in the recruitment process, let's say, which is not very clear. But thank you for your input.
Do we want to take the one other question, or would you rather?
No, I think that we can take the questions at the end. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. So just other few quick points on this, because I know we're got caught up. Quick question, big question to ask yourself to me is, where have you got capacity within the university? Which subjects and at which levels, right? Where might there be an opportunity to fill some space in your own institution with international students? And how can that therefore align with the markets where there's demand for that discipline? So for example, out of Japan come more liberal arts students that come out of Saudi Arabia. Is that maybe a market you want to pursue because you have more capacity in your liberal arts programs? Other questions: which countries is there an opportunity? Obviously China and India. In terms of sheer size, to me, there have to be markets that you would consider. Understand that you have to be careful and manage that, but to me, they should be markets of priority. Where does capacity and market demand align? For example, in STEM disciplines, non-STEM disciplines, some markets are skewed that way. It might be a particular focus of yours. Therefore, you should focus your recruiting activities on those markets where there's strong STEM demand. Or is it non-STEM? Is that where you've got some real areas of opportunity? And therefore, which non-STEM markets do you potentially focus on? And ultimately, what do you do with all of this? And Nick is going to talk us a little bit more, providing us with some really great market insights on what's going on today in the market.
Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of feedback from 2024 regarding the agent perspective. a little bit of a spoiler alert. It's going to confirm some of the talking points we just made, and some of the things that are important to students and agents. But yeah, firstly, just touching on why do we care what agents think? Why are agents important? Firstly, the global estimate of international students they recruited through agents is around between 40 to 60%. Every time estimates and surveys are done, it comes out with a very different number. So it can go as high as 75% in Australia. The average is about 50 to 60% in UK and Canada. In the US, for example, where I know a lot of people are going to NAFs in the next couple of weeks, agents were a taboo. They were forbidden maybe 10, 15 years ago. And slowly, it's gone from, I did have some data on this. It was about 32% of US colleges were using agents in 2016. And then as of 2022, that's gone to 62%. So the use of agents is widespread and encouraged. Why is that the case? This allows universities to rapidly expand their network very, very quickly. You can have a presence in all manner of regions and countries and markets and cities. It's based on a pay per enrollment model, so that your level of financial risk is much lower. You're not necessarily investing upfront in anything. You're just you're kind of putting a lot of the risk on the agent, really. Agents provide real-time market intelligence. So they're very much on the front lines of what's going on, and that feedback loop is much quicker. So if there's a trend going on, you're much more likely to hear about it, or a problem that needs identifying. You'll be able to do it much quicker than if you were doing it centrally. They provide immediate response to student inquiries. When agents work best when they're considered almost as good as a member of your own staff. That's often the goal. And also in the sustainability point, student satisfaction is generally higher, and dropout rates are lower for students that enroll via agents. So agents as a concept, generally a good thing. Obviously, there are lots of stories and kind of scandals and things like that, but generally you can pinpoint the reasons why these stories happened. It's usually using nefarious or bad actor agents, which are what is possible to avoid. Okay, sorry, that's the intro done. So now it's just to give you some data on what agents actually were thinking. This is the Agent Voice survey. I'm just going to run through some key findings, bit of a highlights reel from 2024. So it was done roughly this time last year, and we're in the process of doing it for this year right now. And it's a survey of 1,000 agents from 111 countries. And we look at the prevailing trends to provide a forecast for recruitment next year. So hopefully that's all clear what we're looking at. So one of the questions we asked, what agents have been doing. So this was taken in 2024, of course. So agents have started recruiting students for new and alternative source countries. So more than half. Agents have started placing students into new and alternative fields of study, and 74% have started placing students in new or alternative destination countries. So this was happening this time last year. So this will only continue next time we do it. Then we asked, what are the top 5 factors that affect student decisions about where they study in terms of destinations? So number one, I will also caveat that South Asia is a kind of a big influencer of the Agent Voice survey. Indian agents, Nepali, Bangladesh didn't show up quite heavily in the survey. So ease of getting a visa, the cost of study of living, the work and migration opportunities in the destination countries, but also safety and security and signing an agreement with the institution are all factors when making study abroad plans. But in terms of orders, getting a visa, obviously number one, not much surprise there. So what we're seeing is the changing landscape in demand, the increased interest of these destinations. So in this order was Germany, Japan, UAE, Spain, Italy, Malta, and US. Again, US probably won't be on this ranking this year. But to point out UAE, this one has really exploded the last couple of years since the pandemic, really. And we're seeing an increase in provision, private universities, TNE, all of this. And you mentioned earlier the that international students look at their future career prospects. This is where a lot of the action is in 2025. A lot of the future industries, a lot of the jobs. They're seeing an attractive lifestyle. It's safe, it's secure. They can work during their studies. So a lot of the fundamentals are very, very good in UAE, and obviously a lot of UAE is we're talking about Dubai here. So that's been a real growth one. Japan is actually now, after mainly focusing on exchanges with other universities, is now starting to actually recruit internationally as well. So it will see continued growth there. And Germany has been a response to post-Brexit, but also some of the issues in Canada. It's seen as a stable destination. Changing global landscape. So these are the countries that decreased in interest. So a lot of things we've talked about at length.
Decreased interest, right?
Decreased, yeah. Decreased interest. So yeah, we've talked about the decline of Big Four quite a lot already, but yeah, this just confirms it. And this was again roughly this time last year. So Australia, Canada, South Africa. We're not too sure why Malaysia showed up, but UK and Switzerland. So cost of living, all these factors have contributed to decrease in interest from agents recruiting. And another one, these are the fields of study that agents are starting to see an increased interest from students in. So we're now seeing some of these new subject areas shaping the choices that students make. So AI, business intelligence and analytics, big data, international business, which has always really been there. But I think since the pandemic, since supply chain management, logistics, I think students, and then obviously medical studies, which we touched on earlier, in Greece as a destination. I think students are not just purely following international business as a degree, as often was the case in UK or Australia. They're thinking a lot more strategically in terms of where the demand for future skills is going to be. So yeah, we're going to see more demand for programs in AI and things like this. When it comes to working with agents, these are the things that they value in support from or the support from their partners in overcoming the hurdles. So quick responses to queries and issues. I think we'll touch on this in another area, but really, really, really important. And it's not just, if you aren't able to provide it, agents will, in more competitive areas, they'll find a provider or an institution who can. And often this can come at peak times during deadlines, and different countries have different expectations. I was reading an article, I think, on LinkedIn this morning about the expectations in China being even more rapid compared to the West. I think Chinese doing business in China means responses are expected within an hour rather than by the end of the day, where it might be in Europe. So really be something to think about. Fast application processing, an ideal thing, but often you want to shield agents and students from the internal bureaucracy and pain points at your university. So it may be that your international office or international recruitment program is great at dealing with students and partners, but then you touches on the admissions department or the accommodation department or finance, and they have a very different philosophy when it comes to customer service or dealing with students. But often for the student or the agent, they're kind of one and the same. They won't see the distinction between the departments, and they'll often even imagine you're all sitting in the same office. So yeah, you're only as good as your kind of weakest area within the organization or institution.
Just to that point, Nick, though, I think you'd be surprised how many students actually say they chose their institution because they made them the first offer.
Mm.
So exactly that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more in the private sector. You'll see kind of 24-hour application processing and things like that. But not say just speed, but flexibility. So having different dates, flexibility on dates. You can extend deadlines, all this sort of thing. I know lots of admissions processes that can be quite rigid, but these things do help in the international marketplace. Scholarships, discounts, obviously not a popular thing to mention when it comes to the finance department, but if you're dealing with maybe a new market who hasn't experienced sending students to your country, sometimes these things can be the kind of the oil that gets things moving. And then flexibility with payments, so, and also cancellation terms if they get a refund. So all these things are really, really helpful when it comes to admissions. So just to build on that, these are the common admissions problems that you may want to think about when you are dealing with international students and checking you don't have problems in these areas. A slow response to inquiries, yeah, it's always number one. And sometimes having things like WhatsApp, a dedicated international student WhatsApp, or for different markets, so you're able to handle these things in real time or in local time. All these things are something to invest in, because competitors may well do. I mentioned lack of coordination between stakeholders. Sometimes the things fall between the cracks between different departments. Slow processes. I think the younger generation have very, very low threshold of patience for this sort of thing. And then I've seen in my time lots of universities implement AI and things like this, basic chatbots, to save time and improve the customer experience. And often it does the opposite, and they're not able to handle any degree of complex questions. And lack of personalization. I think, say, if you need to get to know your market, having local reps, or if you're not able to have regionally focused reps, agents who are able to get to know the students and speak directly to them, and also to collect usable data year on year, and so you can focus on what your conversion rate, how many applications you're attracting, and how you may increase that in future years. So yeah, I think this all adds up towards the conclusion of what we would suggest with Greek universities looking to internationalize. Identify the key markets. I think it's important to, as Alison mentioned, to question why you're doing it. Hopefully it's not purely financial, and you are able to consider diversity across different study areas, levels. I think it's important to think of it in a sustainable way, because like I say, lessons are there from other countries when it's not sustainable and purely based on migration, and you'll soon be ready for the political backlash when that happens. Potential support areas. So these are the other things that really, really are important. So when you are dealing with international students, you need the foundational support skills. So if you are offering taught programs in English, do you have an English language department or connection with an English language school that could facilitate that if there's students who need to be brought up to the right level, or maybe if it's particularly focused in science or STEM or whatever it may be, and then available financial resources of students, so if access to loans, that sort of thing, and also the key communication channels. So make sure that when a student arrives, I often hear horror stories about international students arriving. Yeah, I think I heard one about, it was a university in the Caribbean, and they had literally no information about where their accommodation was, when their first day was. So make sure that you are actively communicating in a different way to international students, because their needs are a bit greater compared to domestic. Develop a marketing strategy that appeals to demographics. So, like I say, dealing with Chinese and Indian agents is very, very different. It requires a very, very different approach, and it can take a lot more time in countries like China to develop them, and also develop relationships with peak bodies, associations, and alumni networks. All these things that you maybe can deliver quick wins when you are approaching new markets. Obviously, I think you mentioned some people attending NAFSA, but use these events to develop local connections with universities and agents who add that extra layer of market support. And then finally, make sure you have the staff or tech resources to respond to inquiries in a timely or personalized manner. So when it comes to international recruitment, it does require investment on campus, and not purely just thinking about the recruitment as well. A slight little commercial break. I'll skip through the ICEF thing. So hopefully you'll be somewhat familiar with ICEF. I would leave you one thing today, would be to follow ICEF Monitor. So if you are under the focus of today is market intelligence, ICEF Monitor is a really, really great resource for that. You may be aware that we do events focused on finding quality vetted agent partners. Happy to provide the program for that, but I won't go on extensively on that. But another useful thing is we do have people who are quite new to international education, new to international recruitment. We do have these courses on ICEF Academy, which are proving quite popular. So we've got the Introduction to International Education course. So if maybe you have staff who are being brought in to the department, all these sort of things. And anybody who's new to the industry, it's quite useful for them to take it just to give them an idea of how it functions, what's going on, why it even exists, what the benefits are. And also if your institution is new to working with agents, we have the Working with Agents course. And they're very, very, very cheap. I think it's €300 or something like that.
As the number and diversity of...
Sorry, I didn't realize there was a video on that slide. And yeah, I'm happy to take any questions. Alison and I see some hands raised.
Yeah. Actually, we can start from, have you finished? Nick and Alison?
Finished our presentation, yes.
Okay, good. So we can take a question from Eleni, Eleni Georgoudaki from University of Patras, asking, has Brexit affected international student mobility? For instance, at the University of Patras, in the lab of Greek language and culture, we have observed an increase in German Erasmus students following Brexit, although it is unclear whether this rise is directly related to the UK's departure from the EU.
I probably am not best place to comment on the Erasmus scheme, but I think there was a break in the Erasmus program. Obviously, UK not being part of the EU meant it could not be part of the Erasmus program. And I think there's a bit of a lag in creating the new one. I think it's the Turing program, I believe. I'd have to Google that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's created a bit of a lag, and so I would not be surprised if German students have changed their focus because of that. Alison, anything to add on that?
I think what you saw in Holland was a direct result of Brexit, right? As students look to find other programs, particularly in English, other continental European students look to find programs being offered in English they previously would have gone to the UK. So I think we've seen an impact of Brexit on mobility, full stop, and that's why I think we're seeing the growth of other European destinations.
I can see, yeah.
Sorry, I'm Eleni who said the question. So may I add to this question, because it's not just the Erasmus. It was very useful to hear your presentation, and thank you very much for that, and all the information from all over the world. What I would like to ask about the agents and how they are involved in the inquiring and the hiring, let's say, students from all over the world. What about the cultural context? It's very important when bringing people to Europe or Greece or country. We need to take in account very much the cultural context of the people, of the potential students. What is to be done in this field?
Yeah, I think what you've just touched on is the difference between agents that maybe you hear bad stories about and good agents, experienced agents who've been operating for many years. So a good agent would have visited the country and destination many, many times, would know the university very, very well, have visited. So they'll have an idea of the campus and they'll have experiences, feedback from students they've already sent. So often you do benefit from an experienced agent who's been around for a long, long time. And the problem you have with agents in general is the barriers to entry to setting up an agency are very, very low. You can just open an email account and hey ho, I'm an agent. That's it. Whereas I think what we found is not since the kind of explosion of aggregators, we've learned that not everybody should be an agent. There's actually a lot of skill and experience involved in becoming an agent. That it's probably enhanced the level of respect that people should have for the role that they play. So that would be my answer. Just you'd find that the experienced and quality agents will handle all those things beforehand. They won't just be recruiting and just once the student is enrolled, then they wave bye and that's it. They will be doing onboarding checks and assisting throughout the process, not just prior to involvement.
I think to the point as well, just to add on to it, yes, good agents are in it for the long term. They want to match students to both countries as well as institutions. But I do think there are some challenges when students first arrive. We were talking about this yesterday, Nick, and what you do to help students assimilate quickly, right? And that is, I think, everything. For example, in Canada, how to dress. They're teaching international students where to be able to get the food that they're used to eating. I know these sound very minor things, but they're actually things that students, where can they go to get help if they're struggling, right? So culturally, we know that particularly like Asian students, and particularly female Asian students, they don't like to put their hand up and say, they're very, generally, this is a generalization here, they can be quite reserved. And if they are struggling, they're not confident to put their hand up and go and help. So I think there is a real opportunity. You have to do that well. And the institutions that do it well, you can see the impact of that.
Yeah, I think that's it. You need to do a bit of an audit of the overall experience and just kind of work out or how you can better inform these things that you think are obvious, but to an international student who's just arrived off a long flight are not. And I see actually I travel through Heathrow quite a lot, and so many universities have a kind of
welcome desk and
mini kiosk at Heathrow Airport just to kind of welcome international students. Because I find that when I travel quite a lot, and often a new country, that's probably the most lost you ever feel is how do I get from the airport? It's not always obvious, and there's not always Wi-Fi, and it's not immediately obvious to somebody who's not from that country. So there's many different kind of pain points that you can alleviate just by thinking about it from their perspective.
Well, and also actually you see, to your point, that sort of 3 to 6 weeks in can be the point at which the international students really feel lost, right? The shiny bits worn off. Maybe, first week on campus is quite nice, and then they actually start to settle in and they really can start to feel very lonely, vulnerable. And I think that it's actually making sure you have in place outreach in those instances so we can keep communicating with them. And those first few months, they settle in and feel welcome.
Well, thank you for your comprehensive response. From my perspective, I think that culture plays and should play an important role regarding recruitment and recruitment strategy. And it's always easier to attract students, recruit students, and interact with students from countries more compatible culturally with yours. I can see a couple of hands raised in our virtual room. I will start from Mr. Shakil.
Thank you, Theo. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Listen and Nick. Thank you, ICEF and Study in Greece and EduWorld as well, to give me an opportunity to talk with you regarding these issues about the study in Greece. I have only few specific questions because I am working as an education agent since 17 years back. So I do live in Düsseldorf in Germany. I'm an international student. I studied in the UK and Germany as well. But I do recruit students from South Asia, especially from Bangladesh, and some students from Africa. And I have the ICEF agent accreditation as well for a long time. So I feel some issues when I recruit some international student. So they're very much worried about the stay back option after study, what they'll do. I can say it PSW in the UK or job searching visas. And they want to know what they will do after the job searching visa. Suppose in our Germany, we have the skill job option or EU blue card option, or sometimes in the self-employment option for every student who completed their degrees. And after that, they get the PR. From our South Asian student perspective, the PR is very important. Permanent residence or job option is very important from our South Asian perspective, but it is not important for Chinese, maybe for US student and other European student. So I have seen only 12 courses you have only in bachelor. You don't have any engineering program in Greece, and you have many options in masters. So I believe this is a very good option for master student studying in Greece, but I would like to know more specifically what your government think about the internationalization of higher education. or you can say, how do you want to facilitate our students, especially from South Asian student? What is your initiative, or what is your projected number? Suppose Ellison shows some number, Japan is thinking like this, within the next decade they will do like this, South Korea will do like this. So do you have anything in mind that our number for international student will go in this number within this period of time, like in 2030 or 2035? Do you have anything like that? Or and I have any additional question about the agent perspective. How do you will facilitate us as an agent? So what you are thinking about the education agent? As an agent, I don't see any big number of agreement with the Greece institutions. Suppose from our South Asia and India, KC is one of the biggest player. You know, Jedoka is one of the good player, and sometimes I see some other good agent. They don't have any good agreement with the Greece university. Maybe I'm not fully aware of this, but I have studied last night totally 3 to 4 hours, but I haven't seen any visible thing that I have the very good connection with this and this. No one can say like that. But I'm working for Danish institution, I'm working for Hungarian institution, I'm working for some German and Dutch institution as well. But for Greece, it is quite difficult to reach the institution, because I have already sent some email to you, but I haven't got any response. So these 3 questions of mine: number 1, what your government is thinking, what you are thinking about international student, and how do you think you will facilitate as us as an agent? I will be interested to work with you. Okay, thank you. This I would expect the clear answer from you, Theo, especially.
Well, thank you very much for your focused questions. First of all, concerning the internationalization strategy on a national level, as I mentioned in my introduction, Greece is a newcomer in internationalization. By internationalization, we mean offering international programs to attract international students. There is a wide range of masters, but we should make a distinction here. There's approximately a number of 200 masters, but these degrees also recruit Greek students as well. So they're easier sustainable. Whereas when it comes to bachelor's degrees, it's forbidden by law to attract and recruit Greek students to international bachelors offered by Greek universities. That's why we do not have many bachelors. And we should also take into account that only within the 4 last years, Greek public universities are allowed to offer international bachelors. So it was forbidden to create an international program at the bachelor's level with tuition fees. The fact that Greece is a newcomer in internationalization is reflected in the number of international programs offered. This leads to not a lack of internationalization strategy. We're at the first steps. We're doing our baby steps. So we are about, by we, I mean studying Greece together with all Greek state universities, 24, and the Ministry of Education, as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which is included in this shared goal. We are about to craft an internationalization strategy. We do not have clear goals, objectives, and KPIs, if you want, yet, but we are about to define our goals, objectives, and set our priorities and identify our target market and countries. When it comes, as far as Southeast Asia is concerned, there are more and more Indian students and students from the Indian subcontinent in general choosing to pursue their studies in Greece. But there are also visa issues. that we are about to tackle in collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we are in a transition period era, and I think that within the years to come, things will be more clear and strategic, and we will facilitate your job as well. Last but not least, collaboration with recruitment agents is not taken for granted for Greek public universities. We didn't have this culture and this habit, this trend to collaborate with recruitment agents, because promotion and marketing, for promotion and marketing of our international programs, we mainly collaborate with international study portals, study platforms like, study portals, Keystone, Times Higher Education, etc., in order to promote our programs and attract international students massively. But now, given the fact that the needs are increasing and the sector is growing rapidly, we are about to target some countries and collaborate with recruitment agents from these countries. So feel free to reach out to us again, and yeah, we will be in touch. I don't know if someone else, representative of Greek University, wants to add something here, especially.
I would like.
Yeah.
I would like to add something on what did you say, Theodore, and this is very much related to what Shakil has asked. Among the Greek master degrees, we have some of them that they are funded by EU and the Erasmus Mundus. So in our case, I coordinate one of them. We have the funding and the priorities to attract students from Southeast, from Asia, because this is part of our funding planning. But this is like supported, and we have the means and the financial aid, substantial, I will say, from EU. This is just, to add a few things, add on top what Theodoros has mentioned. And this is exactly the case as Theodoros stated. But there are some master degrees, mainly funded by EU, that they provide and they facilitate the attraction of talent from all over the place, but particularly from this area to Europe.
Okay, but last EIE in Toulouse, I met some of your colleagues in your booth in study in Greece, in France, maybe George or maybe your another colleague in your booth. They said me that you are very much interested to work with the education agent. Yeah, but I don't know what is your planning, what you are planning for us. And so I need a clear vision that you will be interested in after certain time, maybe after certain time, to work with the agent or not. Because otherwise ICEF maybe help you in other way, not in for the marketing, especially because we are focused on ICEF and EIE, NAFSA, different places for networking and promoting the education. So I've understood your point, but I think studying Greece maybe help us to reach this sort of thing, and that we can promote one university, one institution, even in the Greece in market.
Actually, we already collaborate with a network of recruitment agents from India and Bangladesh as well. And we also organized an event in collaboration with Net24 in Athens in March. So feel free to contact us again, and we can connect you with interested Greek universities.
Thank you.
Ms. Makriani.
One last thing I want to add in the conversation, internalization. I'm sorry, about the students that come from third countries, but not only them. In if Greece and the universities, but it's not a matter of universities, it's a matter of country, if they want to keep the population that comes in Greece and pays their money to study in Greece and get them employed, then there has to be something to consider about this, right? Like in a country level, to keep the brains from not going to another country, we have to talk about the salaries, which is another issue. So you understand, I think, that it's a matter of country at the end and economics, which is a vicious cycle. But yeah, that's my input on the matter.
It's a vicious cycle, as you mentioned, and it should be changed into a virtuous cycle. And I don't know if Nick and Alison can add something here or provide their perspective relating this question to what other countries did in this level. I mean, smaller countries like the Czech Republic or Hungary, how do they provide incentives and motivation to international students to stay in the country?
I'll just chime in a little.
Is there a telling example out there? Yeah.
It's not so telling, it's more of a general example of what university are doing is just the employability aspect. I think where the question, well, today's international student is a lot more discerning about where they go and what the employment prospects are at the end of it. So I think it's important that universities establish links with the private sector, with local success stories, local industries. Sadly, it's not going to fix the vicious cycle that you may find in the local or national economy. But if there are success stories that are seeking to export and internationalize and would like to champion the sector, just for example, I mean, where we met, Language Cert or People Cert, that's one that has renown outside Greece. I think partnering with companies like that, with things like internships, graduate schemes, all these sort of things can help to raise the profile of the destination and actually think, okay, I could see a future here. It's not just a place to study, it's not just a stepping stone. So I think it's important to look to build links with the private sector to do these things. Alice?
I was going to say, just to add to that, I think maybe as well, because what you're raising is an issue beyond our immediate control. I think maybe it is to also focus on markets which are not looking for pathways to migration, right? Not all markets the students want to be employed and stay on. In fact, there are many countries where the students are quite happy to come, study and return. So I think it may be that you need to be, at least in the short term, more selective on markets until you can fix the bigger question, which is, I think, beyond our scope, right? Which is average salaries. When you've got an average salary for an engineer of 1,200 euros a month, that's a limit, right? There are definitely some markets for whom that might be a compelling proposition, but there are for many citizens of other countries that potentially is not. So I don't know the answer to the question about Czechoslovakia and Hungary. Those are not markets that I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable speaking about what they've done in that space. I can certainly do some work on it, but they're not markets I've worked directly with. Only in terms of outward mobility, not inward.
I can add something for Hungary because I am working almost 9 universities for them. Because if I give the example for University of Győr, they are collaborating with the Audi in Győr, and Hungarian policy is not to stay to keep their international student in Hungary. Actually, they want students will finish their degree and they will return back to the other country or their home country. And most of the universities policy, not only the universities, is like the government policies like that. They have only 9-month stay back option. But Hungarian language is very difficult to get that job. Sometimes only few students get the job. So almost 95% of the students, they need to go to the other country for their further education, or maybe they come back to their home country. So, but they are very much attached to the local industries like automobile industries, like Bosch and other companies. they already built their warehouse there. They have very strong connection with the agricultural industry. So they have the industrial connection with their local industrial area and other places. Especially Budapest is a very tourist-based area. So they have very good connection with the job market, like the restaurant and other as well. And some part I have seen some university working to place their student to some chain, like the restaurant and other places. So Hungary, actually, their policy is not to keep their student in Hungary. Thank you.
Yeah, that's clear. Yeah, it also depends on what you want to achieve through internationalization. Yeah. If some countries like Hungary, as you mentioned, they're not that interested in keeping the international student, but it can be a study destination. We can take one more question from the chat. How will the establishment of international private university campuses in Greece following the 2024 education reform influence the patterns of student mobility? From Bill Toyer. Nick or Alison, do you want to take it?
I would say it will increase them. So it's private. You can often learn lessons from the private sector. In the private sector, when it comes to international recruitment, do it quite efficiently and quite aggressively. So you can be assured that they'll be out recruiting to any markets that are receptive to Greece as a newcomer destination. So it will be positive.
Yeah, and I think after that, it's a much more simple mandate for a for-profit institution, right?
So you mean that it will create a healthy competition between the private and the public?
Well, I think it will build the Greece as a destination, right, by attracting international students. If you start that, if their international students speak to their friends back home and they talk about Greece as a destination, I think putting Greece, as you started to do, on the world map as an international education destination and having the private sector help with that, I think will actually enhance enrollments for all Greek institutions.
I think you're right. There's things that the private sector is very good at, and promotion is one, but there's also things that they will not be able to replicate from the state, from the universities. So I think it will overall raise the profile, raise demand. So it's not a bad thing.
For sure.
Yeah. That's optimistic. Konstantinos, what's your perspective? Or what do you want to ask?
Yes, I would like, to have, a final comment from my side. I think that, the United Arab Emirates, it's a very nice story. I was in KAUST, so I can compare what was the problem in KAUST in Saudi Arabia and what are the advantages of the new policy of the United Arab Emirates. Over there, in my opinion, this is why I would like the opinion of Alison, Theo, and Nick. Like over there, you can see the culture is important. So they create a hub for all this area that you are Muslims, to come in a safe Western type culture. So United Arab Emirates, they combine the most Western culture that you can find in the Middle East, in the Gulf area. So they attract the rich, Arabs that they did not want to go, or any talented Muslims that they did not want to go, let's say, to Western Europe because it was easier for them to adapt it in this environment. This was one. So it was the culture, the Western type, let's say, freedom that they can provide. And at the same time, all of them, in comparison with what KAUST tried to do, is like they collaborated with the very big institutions in Europe and in US. So all the universities there, they are backed up with a strong collaboration with the next step and the reputation of big US universities and UK universities. So they combine three things and also a fourth thing. United Arab Emirates is the financial center of the Gulf area. So you have the industry, you have the facilities and the services. I'm not going to make any analysis. I would like to remind Theo, and this will stay between me and Theo, like the services that you mentioned, the safety, the learning campus. Theo, you will understand, based on my last contribution in the rectors meeting, how important are these things. We don't want to disseminate because we would like to avoid this. But this is between me, Theo, and we are going to continue this discussion in ARSA. So Is the market, is the collaboration, like very strong collaboration with very famous universities, the Western type economy, and the market. It's a financial center. So this, in my opinion, this is the four things that you need, the four elements that you need to have if you would like to have sustainable, I repeat, sustainable internationalization. Otherwise, probably people, they come, they try, and they leave. Because you need to attract them, stay, and disseminate for the rest of the world. This is a nice destination. But in my opinion, United Arab Emirates is like, they have, it's a good story for us as a Greek universities, but, this needs more than the universities. This needs the society, and this is the government, the Greek governments, to focus in something that we are excellent there. So the market is there. So I think that we still can play in this role in the Western Balkans. And another story, and I finish, Alison, probably you can reconfirm another nice example. In Africa now, they try to do in Africa is the university which is called UM6P. They are trying to follow the same approach as what is happening in United Arab Emirates. So to collaborate with a very strong university, they have excellent facilities. They try to attract and keep the Africans, so Morocco to be the center. It's they still lack, they try to link with natural gas there in order to have the market, around them. But I think that these are the four elements. Without them, it's very hard. It's very hard to compete. It's not to attract some students, but you need to compete in order to be sustainable, because these things are changing. Changing. Even with the climate change, they can change where the financial centers they move. So this is my comment on this very nice, and thanks to studying Greece, opportunity to listen, this kind of discussion. Thank you.
I think, sorry, you make very valid points about the UAE, and also the fact they're in it for the long term, right? I think the first campus, I think I was lucky enough to work on the first foreign campus of a university that opened in Dubai, which was the University of Wollongong, an Australian university, which most people have never even heard of or couldn't place Wollongong on the map, right? But they were in, and it's 30 years the UAE has been working to position the UAE as a study destination. So I don't think it happens overnight, but to your points, as a safe country, proximity and alignment with the region, which I think is really important. It's work opportunities, right? Not necessarily study pathways to migration unless they can get a job, right? So it's not that everybody wants to come in to stay, because not everybody can stay. But I totally agree with you. I think the UAE is a very interesting case study. And, Monash tried it in South Africa, but they didn't get the kind of traction that they were, nothing like the traction they were hoping to get. And I think that was just in contrast to the UAE, which was a similar time. The landscape was not nearly as supportive.
I'd just like to spell out this little elephant in the room about UAE as a recruiter. It's able to recruit Russian students where other destinations in the EU are not. So that's probably another string to its bow as an international education destination.
Yeah, unquestioned.
And also, I also would like to add, this was the mistake from CAUS, because in CAUS you can see excellent facilities, excellent hotel facilities, experiment facilities, laboratories, but they would like to be by themselves. They do not, like to align, to make alliance with, other kind of universities. And also the society is more conservative. So you stay within the campus. It's like a military, let's say, camp. No, it's not military, but it's like a camp.
What was the name of the university you mentioned in Africa? UN6P?
This is in Morocco. Try to follow them because they have excellent, let's say, perspective. However, they lack, if you go, it's like a campus. So they have the same, let's say, outside of the society. It's not like UAE. It's not a Western society. Outside of the campus is a different story. So UAE has tried to combine everything, a Western type society, facilities, attractions, internationalization, and the market next to them. But UM6P tries to convert Morocco, following these policies, to a education center for Africa. Yeah. It's like University Mohammed VI, it belongs to the king over there, UM6P. It's a uniform Mike, 6, the number Papa.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Is there any other question from our attendees? So, Nick and Alison, do you have to add something else or conclude?
I just one more of a kind of housekeeping at the end. The source. Oh, let's go out to the deck. We'll share the deck afterwards, but the sources for a lot of the data and stuff that we quoted it can be found here as well. But hope everybody has a good weekend.
Well, yeah, of course. Thank you very, very much for your contribution to our internationalization endeavors. I really appreciate your insights and perspectives, and thank you for sharing them. It's a great pleasure and honor to collaborate with you, and I think that in the near future we will have the chance to further elaborate on all these aspects. Internationalization is fresh and is growing rapidly in Greece, and Greek public universities are trying their best. I don't know if you are aware of the fact that more than 50 master's degrees will be created. These masters will be offered jointly with prestigious international universities, mainly from the United States and the United Kingdom. I can send you the list after our webinar. So thank you so much for sharing your perspectives, insights, expertise, and experience. Your presentation and the webinar, the video will be available online on our Studying Greece Intelligence page. And wish you all a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.